Assalamu alaikum. We continue from our last response to colon. Today we continue from part 2. This time the strategy remains the same. If it gets too long, we will separate it to multi-parts. Continuing from the last source, now we are continuing from 13 minute and 28 second time frame. Now before we start up this video, I would like to leave a shout out to a Muslim brother who has really few subscribers. I want to help him out. He does really create great content. I really wish for all of you to go and subscribe to his channel. He is also responding to colon, like me. The link to his channel will be in the description. Before we establish, allow me to respond to source 73. It seems on source 73, he is giving us a transliteration to what Al-Suyuti is supposedly saying in his book, Al-Itqan fi Ulum al-Quran. It seems he is referring to the following statement. Quote, what makes it easy to memorize and having it read easily, read fixed, end quote. So it appears that Mr. Milchart is suggesting that Al-Suyuti is claiming people limited the readings to what is only easily memorized and fixed, eliminating possible variants. However, this is deceptive at best. Let's read the full quote. Quote, the seventh that is a hadith, he made a huge mistake. He said it is obligated from this that what came out of the reading of those seven, what has been proven to be transmitted from the Imams and others, and that is according to the Mus'haf typography, that is not a Quran. And that is a great mistake for those who categorize the qira'at from the following Imams like Abu Ubaid al-Qasim bin Salam and Abi Hatim al-Sijisti and Abi Ja'far al-Tabari and Ismail al-Qadi. They mentioned double of those, and people were reading of the head of 200 in Basra, and on the reading of Abi Umru and Yaqub in Kufa, and on the reading of Hamza and Asim, and in the Levant of the reading of Ibn Amr, and in Mecca on the reading of Ibn Kathir, and in the Medina of the reading of Nafi', and they continued on that. And so when it was the numbers of ahead of 300, Ibn Mujahid proved the name of Qusay and deleted Yaqub, said, and the reason for abbreviating on the seven, even though the Imams of the Quran of those of great value and of those of great number, the narrators from the Imams were a lot, and so when it was abbreviated, I shortened it to make it in accordance with the typography of the manuscript, to make it easy to memorize and fix. So he looked to who was famous as trustworthy and honorable, and took long time in staying with the reading and agreeing on what to take from, so they made it unified to each city one Imam, and they didn't leave with that what has been transmitted from the Imams, except for those of the readings and no reading from it, as the reading of Yaqub and Abi Ja'far and Shayba and others. End quote. So it appears that this Orientalist have misquoted what Al-Suyuti said, painting him to appear to have eliminated conflicting readings and variants to make it easy to memorize, when in fact these were turuq, which as we explained are multiple ways in which a narrator is taken from a riwayah. For example, Ibn Kathir taking from Hafs and teaching it to his people. This method was utilized to cover the Quran as much as possible to a wider range of people. Instead for one Imam to travel from one place to another, they choose Imams for those local areas to make them a tariq, to teach the public. So instead of this huge number of turuq, Ibn Mujahid decided to lower it down to make it less numerous as possible. At no point did the original source said anything about a variant of conflict reading. Now we reach the most important part, on page 19 and page 20. In few parts of it, I will show a screenshot and address each controversial footnote. Let's take a look at source 75. 74 was already dealt with earlier. I tried, and yes, I opened well over 103 tabs to find this claim, until I stumbled across possibly the closest I found. Quote, Hadith 18771. Sa'id bin Umru al-Sakuni told me. Al-Walid bin Salma told me. Thor bin Yazid told me. From Khalid bin Ma'dan, from Mu'adh, that he said in God's saying, clear book, he said among the ahruf that was lost from the tongue of the non-Arabs, they were 6. End quote. It's funny because Al-Tabari himself rebuked this narration. Quote, Walid bin Salma al-Filistini, liar. End quote. So we have the narrator Walid bin Salma is regarded as a liar, but that is not the only issue here. You see, the scholar said that Al-Tabari says 6 readings were lost, but he never mentioned those readings were belonging to a non-Arab. Okay, now that is not a good start. Milchart manipulated what Al-Tabari said, and not only that, cited a fabricated narration. By this time, it's hard for me to trust anything onwards from this guy or even Gabriel. I could edit now, but wait for it. He makes up a work attributed to Al-Tabari that he never wrote. Al-Tabari Kitab al-Jami' fi al-Qira'at. I'm sorry, but what? Al-Tabari never wrote that book. He never wrote a book called Kitab al-Jami' fi al-Qira'at. I tried so damn hard to find it, neither searching for it in the memory of my knowledge or in Tabari, but no evidence were found. Where the hell did you pull this from, Melchart? I don't think he is referring to Al-Qira'at wa Tanzil al-Quran, which even not his own work. As for the claim 78, the closest I found was the following. Quote, he said, and Ibn Jubayr al-Makki wrote before Ibn Mujahid a book in the Qira'at and shortened it to 5. He chose from each city an imam, and he shortened it to that because the manuscript that was sent by Uthman was 5 to these cities, and it was said he faced 7. These 5 and Musahaf of Yemen and Mushaf of Bahrain, but those 2 Mushafs were never heard of, and Ibn Mujahid and others like him wanted to mine the numbers of Musahafs, so he replaced from the Mushaf of Al-Bahrain and Yemen 2 readings. The number of the manuscript were completed with them, and it happened to match the number of the news was based on, and so this news happened to anyone who didn't know the origin of the matter and had no knowledge. End quote. This is probably so far the only correct citation from this Orientalist. However, there seems to be one issue here. This hadith is considered ahad, due to Jubayr bin Makki being the sole narrator, and thus we can use it for deeds but not for knowledge. Quote, and our companions differ with others in regard to the ahad khabar. Khabar is another name for a hadith. Is it permissible to use it for deeds and knowledge together, or deeds without knowledge? And on the majority of the scholars of science say it is permissible to use it for deeds but not for knowledge. End quote. Let me explain. Say the Prophet commanded us in a hadith to perform a certain act or a deed. If it comes from ahad hadith, we can perform it. But if a hadith that contains knowledge or information about something, then we should not accept it. Thus, the narration earlier is rejected due to the fact that it holds no deeds or ethics, just knowledge. Okay, now what about the claim that Ibn Mujahid never explained why he has chosen 7 readings? Well, that is just a lie. He did explain his methodology. Quote, those are 7 people from Hijaz and Iraq and Levant, the left behind in regards to Al-Tabi'in, those who preceded the Sahaba, and the majority agreed upon their readings from the people of all cities of these cities, that was named, and other cities that are close to them, until when a man have an odd harf, he reads it from it among the ahrufs, that was narrated from among those of the first ones, solo, and so this is not part of the reading of the majority, and no one with any intellect shall pass what the imams and the salaf, the people during the Prophet time, in something he sees permissible in Arabic, or what is read beside what has been agreed upon by majority. End quote. The following are the methodologies that Mujahid undertook in his work. While it is not a direct quote from him, this comes from the same imam that is going to be mentioned later by the same Orientalist, Makki bin Abi Talib. Quote, and the most choice is they, referring to imams among them Ibn Mujahid, that in the ahruf, referring to the acceptable readings, if these 3 things are gathered in them as their properties, the strength of the Arabic language, agreeing with the Mus'haf, majority agrees on it, the majority on them what the people of Medina and Kufa agreed on, for they had strong convictions, and so a choice has been made, and maybe what they made of the majority of what the people of the 2 Haramains, and maybe they made the choice on what Nafi and Asim agreed on, for the reading of those 2 imams are the best readings and the most connected and chained as authentic, and the most eloquent in Arabic, and next to it in eloquence is the reading of Abi Umru and Al-Kasai, may God have mercy on their souls. End quote. As for claim 79, thankfully the author gives us the names, so let us see what they are. First, I was unable to find that quote at all until I decided to look up these authorities. One of them stood clear, Abu Abbas bin Ammar al-Mahdawi. So who is he? His full name is Ahmad bin Ammar bin Abi Abbas al-Imam Abu Abbas al-Mahdawi. He is regarded as unknown. Not only this Orientalist quoted a claim that cannot be verified among the authorities is someone who is unknown in rank, and we cannot accept unknown in Islam. As for claim 80, we already dealt with al-Mahdawi. The rest is just his Orientalist commentary. Before we wrap up on page 20 as well, let's read one claim that stood out, 89 on page 20, which will subsequently address sources 82 to 88, given that the author was explaining in abbreviation Shanbooth biography, so for the sake of brevity, we will ignore it and focus on the controversial part. Let's begin with the most controversial one, 89. Conventionally, it is correct, quote, and a group of judges and scholars of fiqh that look at the case, and he repented and returned from his opinion, and so wrote a paper, and its copy, Muhammad bin Ahmad bin Ayyub, also known as Al-Shambuth, said, I used to read a ahruf differ from that attributed to Mus'haf of Uthman, may Allah have mercy on his soul, that the companions of the Prophet agreed on, and on its reading. Then it was clear to me the errors of my ways, and so I repent, and won't do it again. and declare it for God, I ask for innocence. If Uthman Mus'haf is the truth, that shall not be differed with." End quote. Again, this narration seems to stem from one narrator, and that is himself, the man, Muhammad bin Ahmad bin Ayyub, who was already known as Ahad in narration, and we already explained that Ahad regarding knowledge is not to be used. Now let's accept for a moment, let's concede for a moment that the narration cited earlier is correct. What does that prove? Nothing really. Ibn Shambud was simply caught reading a rejected narration that we already explained in our first response to Colin, some attributed to Ibn Mas'ud as his official reading. This is the end of part 3. In part 4, we will wrap up our response. Thank you for watching. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.